Our next panel is about using your influence for good. It's about women who use their voice and their social platform to make the world a better place. And we have an amazing discussion with Angela Davis, Lee Tilghman, and Jaime King. Come on up, ladies.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. How are you guys? So good to be here.
Beautiful woman.
Power of influence. Power of influence, you guys. I truly believe, and it's actually scriptural, but to much is given, much is required. As someone that motivates and inspires and coaches for a living, it's important to pull from my life and stories to be able to share and inspire and influence. Something really beautiful to think about when we're given these amazing ideas or these amazing platforms. When God breathes those into us, it is our duty and our responsibility to breathe them out into the world. And if we don't have the lung capacity to receive more. So it is our duty to breathe it out. It is our duty to share it. When we know it, we share it. When we learn it, we share it. When we go through something, that test, that becomes our testimony. That's part of what we are to do. So, hi guys.
Amen.
Amen.
That was well said.
That's what's up. Are we ready for this? Jaime and Lee, such a pleasure to be on here with you guys. You guys understand influence. You understand that, and you both have incredible platforms. Can you talk to us a little bit? Jaime, we'll start with you. Can you talk to us a little bit about why you feel like it's important to use your platform for influence?
What's interesting is I feel like I sort of stumbled into the process of that. It was something that was very, it wasn't intentional for me. Because when I started speaking very candidly or truthfully about what it is that I was going through, it almost felt like some kind of necessity to get it out. And it came really from a place of areas where I felt like I was alone in the world or going through something that I couldn't find information on or whatever that thing was. And I have a really hard time with people not knowing the truth about things, especially when it comes to me or to my family or whatever that thing is. And so it's interesting now because now we can talk about influence and how we can speak to people in a positive way, in an authentic way, right? But when you're starting to do that in the beginning, we weren't having these kind of conversations, right? And so it was just real for me. And the way that it started was I was diagnosed with endometriosis and PCOS when I was 28. And I went undiagnosed for a really long time. I lost my first baby at that age and continued to miscarry and miscarry and miscarry. And it took many years for me to have my first child. And when I was going through this, I cannot explain what it felt like, that this one thing that we're told as women is our gift, that we can carry life. And then all of a sudden someone says, well, maybe that might be in question, right? And the way that it impacts you on so many different levels. When I had my child and it was all over the press and all over the news, it just felt like it was missing something. Oh, like this happy, bullshit. It's not that my family wasn't happy or perfect, it was just that the journey that it took to get there, nobody knew about. And so that's when I just wrote a long essay about this is the truth about the journey of what it took for me to have this beautiful child. And my girlfriend, Lena Dunham, she has the same issues. And that's when we decided that we were just going to be honest about it. And it terrified
Beautiful.
me.
Yeah.
Terrified me. And that's when I learned if it terrifies you, you have a responsibility.
That's right.
And a way to do that thing. And if it terrifies you in a way, also it's a responsibility to look at what that fear is. Is it a fear because by saying it, it will actually hurt you for real? That's a different story. But if it's going to give you that feeling that you're elasticizing outside of what you normally run with, usually that area that you're afraid of is that thing that you need and other people need from you.
That's right. It's the truth that sets us free.
Yes.
There's freedom in our truth, and there's something so powerful about being willing to tell your story. And it immediately disarms that feeling of, I'm the only one. It immediately, when we have the ability to share our story, it immediately puts us in community. And it's community that ushers in that unity. So immediately, the isolation and the loneliness is disarmed when we're willing to share.
Exactly.
In that way.
And it was amazing, the response, because it went from a world where nobody was talking about this thing to thousands and thousands of people responding back about their experience. And I remember that next day I was at Soho House getting brunch or something, and a man came up to me, and he's holding his plate, and he's kind of shaking, and he just burst into tears. And I was like, oh God, are you okay? What, are you, and he said, my wife and I were about to separate. And she read something you posted last night, and she didn't walk out the door. And the reason why they're about to separate is because she had the same thing. And women that suffer from these kind of reproductive illnesses, over half of relationships for women that have endometriosis, adenomyosis, PCOS, end up breaking up. And 37% of women are diagnosed with this. And those are only the women that are diagnosed. We're not talking about women of color or other people that don't have the same kind of access to this, because we don't want to talk about that kind of stuff, right?
That's right.
Bullshit, we have to.
We have to. We have to. It's one of our greatest tools. Tell us why you decided to use your platform, why you feel called to use it to influence.
So I started off with just a food blog. I was posting smoothie bowls, and I was so into the health movement. And I used my platform as just a way to share recipes. If you've been following me for a while, if you go back to the very beginning, it was just smoothie bowls and salad, because that's what I thought health was. And then I too was struggling with PCOS, but I didn't know it at the time. And my blog was gaining traction. And I suddenly was a health blogger. I found myself being a health blogger. I didn't set out to become that, but I all of a sudden felt that weight on my shoulders internally, and on the side I was actually struggling with PCOS, which is kind of like a silent autoimmune disease where your hair starts falling out. For me personally, I started growing a ton of facial hair. My period stopped. I was having what I like to call like a fatigue blanket, where I couldn't get out of bed after 2 p.m. But I felt like I had to smile for Instagram and be like, things are great, I'm drinking a smoothie.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That thing, right? That lie.
Right, because I think we feel like we have to put on our best because that's what we expect other people to see from us, and especially a place like Instagram where we're going on for, do it, yes, like you got this, girl, take a bath. And it's not always like that. That's not always what it is. I took so many baths with PCOS, and let me tell you, it didn't do shit.
Yeah.
Okay?
It's so bad.
But do you think we do that to ourselves? How do you think it got to that place where that face is so necessary to put on that face, where we have to show up for each other in that face? Where do you think we missed it in that we have to show up with that face?
Since the beginning of time. Women have been told since the beginning of time, you show up, you sit like this, you look like this, you speak like this.
Keeping
you
up
don't
appearances.
do this, you do that.
Yeah.
We've been told forever
Yeah.
what we can and cannot do.
That what we look like is more important than how we're feeling, that smiling and being cute and taking up as little space as possible is way better than ruffling feathers, being hard, difficult. Someone at work who's called a bitch is actually just someone who's actually asserting herself, versus a man who's doing the same thing. He's called like a leader.
That's exactly it. And we're told that those are the things that we're supposed to, I was just talking about this the other day, where you look at a lot of CEOs that are females, and they're leading like a man, right? Because they grew up in a kind of culture where they stripped themselves of what makes us so amazing as women, which is our intuition, our compassion, our empathy, our gut. Yeah. We have so many of these beautiful qualities that we've been told we have to strip away to have a seat at the table. And now it's a whole different kind of leadership that we're starting to see that I hope we can really lean into, where we don't have to strip away those things that make us women, but lean into them and also be able to access our strength without being called, you know, a bitch or a diva or angry or this or that. You know what I mean? But really do that so that we can, you know.
Absolutely.
I think it starts with us too. When someone comes up to me and says, "Oh, I heard she's hard to work with," or "Oh, and I say, I personally will say, "Okay, well, what did she do?" And I think in my head, you know what? I bet she probably did something that people are not used to a woman doing, and asserting herself in a way that makes people feel uncomfortable. Because even though there's this crazy women's movement happening right now, we're telling our children, our female girls, like, you're gonna lead. There are still so many invisible barriers that we face that we all fall victim to, and it takes so much work and practice, but it starts with us. And it doesn't start with Instagram or a motivational quote. It starts with changing conversations that you're having with your friends, conversations that you're having with your family, conversations that you're having with yourself.
Amen. And I think I learned this not too long ago, but there's two conversations that we should be a part of. And it's the conversation that is either elevating or expanding. That's it.
Yes.
Elevating or expanding.
Yes.
Those are the conversations. And when we're brought information, like, you know, you're brought something about someone, we're given this information about someone, we have a choice. Either we can put gasoline on that and it could blow up, or we can pour water on it. And we have to start making better choices as women. We have to start to support each other in a different way. And another thing, talking about what women do so well, another thing that we do is our capacity of intimacy, and not the way that we hear the word all the time, but my mom gave me the most beautiful definition of intimacy. Into me. Into me, you see.
Yes.
Into
That's
me.
what I always say. Into me.
Into me.
Yes.
Into me, you see.
Yes.
You know,
Wow.
and if we could just show up without the face and say, "This is me, sister. This is me."
Yep.
You know, and how can I be there for you? You know, I think there's so much power.
Yeah, and we as women have the power to open up and be receptive and to care. It's such a beautiful thing. I think we're able to tap into that. We just have to use it the right way.
I think that when you share your loving with someone, when you come from that truth inside of you, even if people try and hit against it, it's like throwing a rock into water.
Yeah.
You know, because loving is just truth.
Yeah.
And when we come to each other from that space,
Yeah.
even if, you know, one person is not open to receiving it, kind of triggers them because they're not used to being loved or
Yeah.
adored in that way. Eventually
Yeah.
they'll let go. And then you can meet each other and realize there is not just room for one woman at the table, but for all of us. Because
That's
we'll
right.
make the table,
We'll build the table.
you know?
How about we build the table?
But what you
Sounds
said
good.
is so, but
I
the
can use a drill.
conversation about diffusing is so important.
Yeah.
This idea of gossip and how we speak about one
That's
another.
right.
We need to, like, when someone says something, you have a choice.
Yeah.
I think women use gossip as a way to connect with each other and bond. And so next time you feel like someone is coming up to you and gossiping, figure out something to bond over, something else besides bonding over talking about somebody else. Like, I always remember, it's actually a way women crave connection and
Yes.
bonding. And so often we use it to put down others. And there's so many other ways to connect, even if it's about the weather.
Well, women need to be heard. Someone told me men need to be acknowledged and women need to be heard. And I thought that was very, very accurate.
Yeah.
You know, and so there's a lot of things.
How do we show each other that we hear each other? I love that.
For
How
me,
do we show
it's-
each other that we hear each other?
For me, as an actor, my job is to always listen, to observe and to listen, and not just between action and cut, but all the time, because my job is to reflect humanity back to humanity, to bring real people to life that I've never met. That listening, you know, in day to day is leaning in. It's how are you holding your body when you're talking to someone? That's why I have a tendency to do this. It's, you know, leaning in. It's eye contact. When you feel like you're thinking about what you want to say next, kind of stop that. Do your best to just keep listening And I always ask people, do you want my advice, or do you want me to just be a sounding board? Because some people may come to you and speak to you, and they don't want you to tell them what to do, but they just need to be heard. And nodding, when you nod, you're allowing someone to keep sharing what they feel. So it's visual cues that allow people to know that they're there being heard.
That's beautiful. What got you to the place where you are so open and willing to talk about your health on your platform?
I remember sharing that the day that I had PCOS was a really scary day because it was the day that I took my blog and my Instagram, which was my main source of revenue, from a business thing to a personal thing, and I didn't know what was going to happen. And very similar stories. People came up to me out of the woodworks and they said, I too am suffering. And I think like 6 years ago, if you Googled PCOS, maybe 1 or 2 things came up. And if you Google PCOS today, there's so much information about it. 1 in 10 women will be diagnosed, and it's the #1 cause of infertility. It's a silent thing. Like if you explain your symptoms to a doctor, a lot of times they'll just say, it's fine, take the pill. That's what my doctor said to me. So I felt like I was alone, and I felt like I needed to, it was kind of a cry like, hello, is anyone else suffering from this? I knew I wasn't alone, but I needed to feel that. And sometimes it's easier for me to share on my platform than to go up to my doctor and talk about it. So it was kind of like a therapy for me, therapeutic.
I love that. And same with you. What made you become that open and willing to talk about health in that way?
I mean, again, it felt, this is what, eight years ago, oh my Lord.
Wow.
Seems like that's when I started really thinking about, like, how am I gonna, it was a natural thing, and once it was one thing, then it was another thing that I started speaking about, then another thing, because, PCOS and endometriosis and adenomyosis, I felt like I wanted to pay it forward. I went to 9 doctors before I was even diagnosed properly. And so it felt like every woman that comes before me, I'm always asking, what's your period like? What's this like? Because I just want to help other women get through that process. And then, that's when I get involved with Planned Parenthood and making sure that we have, access to birth control, which is one of the #1 things that we utilize to help suppress this. Then it comes into legislature, to the environmental working group, and on and on and on. There's so much stuff that I also do politically that always, somehow comes back to women, because the truth is that my whole life I always wanted to be loved by other women. But when I was little, I was bullied my whole life, to the point to where I moved away from home when I was 14 years old. And I always felt like I didn't fit into this world. I never knew how to fit. And when I tried to fit, I got crushed more for it. There was something that kind of clicked as I got older, of just being honest and true, where it was a different kind of experience. And I think there's something about women that I love so much that I don't want to hold anything back from them,
I love that. That's so powerful. Were you going to add something to that?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I remember sharing the PCOS thing. When I found a way to heal it naturally, I was so excited to share it with people. So I felt like women needed to hear this message, because we have to be our own advocates when it comes to health. There's so many times where when we're in the doctor's office, we're shut down and we're told no, and we're just making it up in our heads. Versus a man going into an office, he's taken seriously when he has symptoms, and women are called like emotional or just on their period.
That's the crazy thing, right?
Yeah.
When I hear the word crazy, I get real triggered. She's crazy.
Yeah.
But but it does play into that with what you're saying about not being heard that way.
Yeah.
I think getting to a place of willingness to share our stories is so important and so powerful. And when we can come to the revelation that life isn't happening to us, but for us, when we can approach life not as the victim, but as as someone that's victorious, we have an opportunity to partner with victory.
I love that.
Yes.
Is there we have to wrap up, but is there one more thing that you guys would like to say or share, or a bit of encouragement for the audience to really begin to use their platform for influence?
I really believe that God doesn't give you anything you cannot handle. And you may be taken up to 99.99999%. You feel like you just can't take it anymore. You're like, okay, God, what the... But those things that you were given that you feel like you cannot handle may be the very things that allow you to crack open that truth inside of you. And it's those places, maybe lean into those places to share that with other people, because there's always going to be someone that comes before you like an angel that needs to hear what you have to say.
It's beautiful.
It's true. You never know.
So good. So true. What about you?
Yeah, I would just say it's so important to share things online, but it's also so important to have an offline community. I feel like a lot of this talk is about like influence and content, but it's also so important to have a strong, if you're going to be sharing things that are vulnerable, it's so important to have a strong group of people that have your back no matter what, whether it's family or friends or a support group or a tribe, a community, something to be able to connect back to, because we can't do this alone. So that's really important. I just wanted to add that in.
Yeah, that's huge. Yeah. That's what I mean when someone comes before you, because it is in the day. It can't just be something that's online.
No.
It's got to be something that's you're living and breathing, and not, with an intent of I'm going to do this thing for social good. It's just allowing yourself to love yourself a little bit deeper.
I love that. But when you do have a cause and something that you're really passionate about, it does immediately create a community.
100%.
So there is something about that too.
Yeah, and so when we start to learn to love ourselves and know that that's okay, then we can start to know that it's okay to start to heal ourselves and to put it out there to say, I need some support right now.
Asking for help, it's so hard sometimes.
And I think if we create the space for our sisters to rise up in their truth, and we create that space for others to rise up in their truth by being in our own truth. Yeah. Because what happens is we become a mirror of possibilities, and someone will begin to look at you and say, well, if she can do it, I can do it.
It's the most beautiful thing, a woman in her truth. Truly, you can tell as she walks across the room, you'll be like, that woman knows what she's doing.
That's right.
A lot of them are here today. It's really inspiring.
That's right. Thank you guys
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys.